a lot of migrations are today politically challenged.
Everyone is building the AI brain for DevOps, but nobody is building the arms and legs it needs. A bunch of tools and MCPs doesn't really cut it.
We always believe in human in the loop.
AI agents, wake up with an amnesia every session. They don't wake up with all the information and all the context that is required to solve the problem at hand.
I do believe strongly that the world tomorrow will see this kind of hybrid setups.
We could find a lot of velocity gain where projects that would have been a few months worth of effort switching to a different cloud could now be finished in weeks instead of months.
People believe that moving to cloud will be cheaper, easy to manage, and okay. AI ops, I would say, it's today limited to only 10 to 20% of the front office automation.
Hello everyone, welcome back to AI in DevOps podcast. I'm Rohit, your host, and I'm excited today because I'm with Dr. Rahul Ghodke, who is a senior vice president at CGI. He leads the global technology operations across Asia Pacific, covering infrastructure, cloud, automation, AI, and emerging tech at a serious enterprise scale. Like his team serves, I think, 50 plus Fortune 500 clients. So first of all, welcome, Dr. Rahul. Before we dive in, I'd love you to tell our listeners a bit about yourself and the kind of work you and your team do at CGI.
Sure. So CGI is a large full life cycle IT service provider and business consulting service provider. We at CGI and specifically my team manage global operations for clients across North America, Europe, Scandinavia. The scale is mid-range to small to large. So in India, we experience the best of all worlds when it comes to managing customer assets, customer environments, and I'm very proud to say that today we have a strong team taking care of not only the classic infrastructure, the classic application stack, but also the new age complex AI driven operations, setting up customers on their GPU farms, helping customers migrate to a AI first kind of an operations. So it's a broad spectrum of things that we do here in CGI. And as a company, we are a 16 billion plus in revenue on a full year basis. We are close to 100,000 strong globally. We are growing at a much faster pace than in the past. And I'm very confident that the future for us is pivoting around AI and how soon we can transform our customers with their AI front offices and how soon we can be there as the partner of choice to help customers in the transformation journey.
Awesome. So that's fascinating. So I think I'd love to pick your brains on AI and ops at this enterprise scale, and also would want to get into cloud migrations and how AI is changing that landscape. And in this podcast, I would especially would like to cover that bit because that is a fascinating world in itself. So I'll jump straight in. So one of the things that I came across from your literature, Dr. Rahul, was your blog that you recently wrote about moving from AI assistants to AI coworkers, right? And that is something that even I had in my thought process, where AI assisted operations, like people are using copilots and maybe ChatGPT or Claude Code to help write their code, write the Terraform, or write some scripts. That's very real today. That's very well accepted, but that is still very individual, right? So the output depends on who's prompting, what is their style, how much do they lean on the AI. A lot of unknowns there. The real unlock, I thought, would be genuine agentic operations, where AI just doesn't assist, it acts, right? Like it acts like a coworker, very much like what is mentioned in the blog, and I'll link it in the podcast as well, description as well. So that is a fundamentally different problem because it can't be susceptible to individual styles anymore. It has to be standardized, structured, and repeatable. So this is where, again, one personal anecdote. So I have been replacing part of my podcast listening habit while on drives with having conversations with Gemini or ChatGPT, and that's when one line that it said, like the AI said, struck me. Everyone is building the AI brain for DevOps, but nobody is building the arms and legs it needs. A bunch of tools and MCPs doesn't really cut it. So forget autonomous agents. Like just the other week, there was this person who was working with Cloud Code, and he ended up destroying a production DB and wiped out 2.5 years of data or something. So the tooling and the infrastructure underneath is probably not yet ready. So Dr. Rahul, so what I wanted to jump into is, how do you see this shift of AI assisted to truly agentic, especially in DevOps? How do you envision that is happening? And what sort of maturity in tooling and platforms needs to happen to unlock that? And what's been some of your experience at CGI?
Sure. So I think the way to answer this is to maybe take a step back 15, 16 years back in terms of uh, where we were in this whole automation journey as an enterprise, as a IT service provider, versus where we are today in terms of transforming clients' operations. The early phase of the maturity when it comes to automation was more focused on scripting, more solving the known knowns, focusing on I would say, the low hanging fruits or the low hanging workloads and trying to automate as much as possible. I can still recall the first few automations were at the end of the day reports that we were sending using scripts back to the application and infrastructure owners. Then we were able to automate the availability reports, and it went on to a level where it matured to then be more policy driven, then more runbook driven, or more those scripts were in the early stage raw, sitting on a particular infrastructure element, and then it was run as runtime elements along with the application relays or the infrastructure relays. Then we moved on to more a structured way to set up the automation. And then 10 years back or 12 years back, we had the CLI based evolution of these configuration management platforms like Chef, Puppet, Ansible, and all of us were jumping on to create infrastructure as a code or an abstraction based kind of an operations protocol for us to manage the client's infrastructure and application stack. And from there on, we were in a zone where the operations was a bit hybrid with workflows on platforms like BMC, ServiceNow, and then partial policy driven automation. We started using multiple methods of automation in terms of using self-serve for provisioning, deprovisioning of environment, and then moved on to a level where today it has become more or less foundational for us in terms of helping customers pivot to a automation native operations. What we've done, and what I guess majority of the service providers today are focusing on, is to build an automation marketplace. Today, I think I quote unquote is driven by automation native to the outcome of what AI today is expected to deliver. So the automation has to be foundational for enterprises or service providers to then pivot to using AI for infrastructure management or for managed services. So the way we are today looking at deployment of AI is to look at various different classic use cases that are today either on a script based kind of a protocol or a workflow driven kind of a model, to see if we can pivot to an AI driven approach. And again, we are not really hung on to the model of using large language or generative frameworks for solving all problems. We are very picky about what we want to solve and what type of AI. I think we still believe that a lot can be done using classic AI if we intelligently manage those transactions. Today, the big challenge that a lot of our customers are facing is there is a lot of buzz around large language models, generative frameworks, and for small to mid range to large transactions, everything is getting deflected onto the last mile, which is generative. We don't believe that that's the technical requirement of solving the problems that are there when it comes to managed services. So we focus a lot on building vector databases. We are very constrained in terms of governance when it comes to managing customer data. As you are aware, we operate across the globe, so we are compliant in terms of DORA and European data privacy requirements. So we are very specific about guardrails, governance, and things like that when it comes to applying any techniques of algorithmic analytics. So the classic AI also today runs on our own proprietary framework, which we have built over a couple of years, and that becomes the front office to manage the correlations, the event streams from an application or infrastructure estate that is being today monitored using various different flavors of infrastructure application and user monitoring tools. And then we have a relay that takes care of the aggregation correlation using our own proprietary ways of automation. And I guess that's the very classic AI, and that solves in operations majority of our so-called level 1, level 1.5, level 2 at sometimes issues where a lot gets prioritized basis the issue definition, a lot gets so-called suppressed versus the so-called priority of the issue, and also the non-issues get managed in terms of managing the event stream in a manner where we don't get flooded with events coming in from those monitoring tools. Today the AI for us in managed services where agentic is becoming more and more foundational for our next generation operations is modeled basis the client services that we are today rendering. If we have a client that has got 90% or 80% or maybe 50% plus of their infrastructure on more cloud native stuff, then agenting becomes a much more easy when it comes to convincing the customer, managing the governance, managing the compliance requirements, because they're already on a framework that's governed, guarded, and certified by the client enterprise. But if you have got a hybrid customer, if you have got a customer with a lot on-prem, we are still subscribing to methods where classic becomes classic ML or classic machine learning techniques or the classic analytics, the the linear analytics becomes the foundational element for us to manage operations. And the agentic fabric is laid in a manner where we have a very close handshake or a warm handshake with our service engineers. So we have a three-tier architecture. We have a first assist model where the first assist teams are coupled up with agents, and these agents are actually doing level 1, level 1.5, at times level 2 kind of workloads. Then we have got the line of support. The line of support is across application and infrastructure. And then after the line of support, we've got the specialization ISMOL L3, L4 types. And then the entire model is operated in a manner where we have got one team. You can say it's a defined model where we don't segregate between application management and infrastructure management. We have got our CGI's way of working called DGOps. It's there in the public forum. Type CGI DGOps, and you will get more information in terms of what DGOps is about and how does it really play in managing customer environments. And it's applicable for all sizes of customers' assets. It can be for small to mid-range to large. It depends upon CGI's best practice. It's built on CGI's best practices. It's built with automation native. It's built with some of the principles of modernizing customers' environment with a strong foundation that has got automation baked in as a part of the core delivery. The teams, when it comes to supporting customers, use our marketplace or automation to a level where we have a lot in the client environment from day one as we take over the operations. And then it keeps on updating in terms of CSI, continuous service improvements, enhancements to the automation marketplace. We are building agents. We've got a multi-layer MCP. And I may not be the expert to give you technical, in-depth information about the multi-layer MCP, but we do have an MCP. We have multiple MCPs in a core router, which helps us to deflect the transactions basis, the transactions apt for last mile AI consumption. And the reason why I'm saying this is because today the big balance that we have to focus on, or the balance that is important for us when it comes to offering the best service and also the best price to the customer, is to balance the cost of operations from cost of talent to cost of compute to the cost of AI. So we are very particular about balancing the tokens. The token burnout, if you are not really controlled, is in the hands of the consumer. And the point that you just raised in terms of the IOs that throughout sometimes long context aware information may not be the way to really manage operations. So we are very particular about defining the input parameters. So we have a prompt catalog, do input framework that allows us to model our so-called incident types in a manner where some of the prompts become easy way to go and check on the last mile vector database what is the possible resolution for problems that are today faced by the service engineers in the operation. So it's a very complex setup. Now, in the operations, we have clients who were heavily focused on lift and shift during the early COVID days. Containers were available at absolutely disposable price when COVID was there in 2019, 2020. And today the challenge is not all those migrations are successful. There is a significant cost escalation. So we are helping customers manage their cost of compute, cost of operations, sorry, the total cost of the hyperscaler expenses in a manner where we're looking at every computer, every service that is provisioned on cloud, and trying to help them simplify basis capacity utilization, simplify basis the priority or the consumption of that particular application component, and also infrastructure component. We are balancing between reserved instances and spot instances where we are trying to focus on FinOps. We've got a structured factory based approach for helping customers migrate. We are using proprietary tools that are there in the market. I do understand you guys also have your own best practices and platforms that have helping migration. So we as CGI have our best practices, our preferred stack, our way of working in terms of delivering these migrations at scale using a factory based approach. It's a combination of skilled SMEs who are certified by the hyperscalers when it comes to well architected approaches. It also bundles automation native to the way we do migrations. A lot of migrations are today politically challenged. A lot of migrations depend upon the application owner's convenience, application, and then the way we handle this is through our best practices to maneuver through the politics and to make sure that these applications get the right kind of foundational framework to be cost optimized and also be there on cloud if required, basis the best architecture footprint that we would want to suggest to our customers. So those are some things in terms of talent. We have close to around 3,000 plus certified SMEs on various hyperscaler migration slash hybrid support kind of approaches that spreads across Amazon, AWS, Azure, Microsoft, GCP, Google, OCI, and a couple of others. We also have a on-ramp architecture that we've defined, and this architecture is for supporting customers who have got complex plumbing across various hybrid setups. Today, the biggest challenge is how do we actually manage those plumbings? Plumbings are the pipes that are connecting various different environments, and then how do we actually put observability to monitor those connections of pipes? So we focus a lot on observability on those pipes, managing those environments by stronger configuration, stronger instrumentation, and making sure that not only the integrations are in place, but also the data that is getting transmitted across various different application layers and also hitting various different services is in a place where it is optimized and it is delivering the right kind of outcome. So that's how CGI operates when it comes to managing customers.
I mean, there is a lot of details in that response. So I think there is a bunch of stuff to peel here. So I think one quick thing that jumps to my mind is, I think you rightly pointed out the significance of classical AI, right? Like, I think it is in today's world, AI almost always becomes synonymous to LLMs, and probably there is a case to be made that we are using generative AI for more things where probably it is more cost efficient or more efficient in general to employ some of the classical AI mechanisms that we have already known. Maybe it is just that generative AI has now become so commoditized that people just wants to solve everything with it. And is there like a cue card, or some pointers where, or this mental framework that you would suggest to first evaluate if there is a classical AI solution that we should employ, or are there specific use cases? Maybe an example would help shine light on this particular problem, on when we should consider or employ the classical AI, and then come to think of the generative AI solution which people default to as of today.
See, look, the reason why generative AI has become the de facto for AI is because it's easily accessible. The way it hit the market was there was mass consumerization of generative AI. It landed in the hands of non-IT slash end consumers in a manner where school kids also started using generative AI to solve their homeworks and things like that. The way we approach is we look at it as an instrument to deliver business outcomes. So if a business is challenged when it comes to costs and they do have a requirement of analytical or algorithmic models to be built. And if there is a limited budget available, then there is a way to look at what kind of AI can best fit for purpose to solve the client's requirement. That's one way to look at it from a economics or a business point of view. The other technical way to look at it is the classification of workloads that require complex processing versus deterministic linear analytical processing clearly segregates the need or not the need of generative frameworks. So if there is a complex processing that is required, and I can give you an example of multi-level correlation when it comes to an application problem that is impacted 1,000 users across various different regions, and it is a customer who requires that application to be up always. A millisecond blip also means $1 million kind of a impact for the customer's operations. To solve that kind of criticality and to have a quick correlation across various different event streams coming in and logs that are getting archived, there is a merit in considering an analytical framework, because that millisecond blip, which impacts billions of dollars of downtime, can also justify couple of hundred thousands of yearly expense of generative AI. There is a business case there. But can I do the same using classic AI? The answer is partially yes, but it takes time. It takes
Yeah, engineering
effort.
effort.
It takes skilled individuals. It takes some level of so-called mental models to connect between dots, and sometimes it's very difficult, and sometimes it becomes a human-centric or human-dependent kind of resolution. So there is merit and basis the economics basis the fit for purpose requirement in terms of clients criticality of a particular business or a particular use case. We decide on the right kind of pivot between classic and generative. When it comes to running managed services, we have a very clear and defined approach. Our front office event streams are always deflected onto a machine learning framework. It's correlation, single pane of observability, model defined kind of way of managing these services using SOP based approach, and then defining those downstream checks when it comes to quality gates or initial level assessments of those incidents using a workflow based kind of model, which is also the workflows are also triggered using classic machine learning. And that's the so-called 50% of what managed service providers are today requiring. Now, the other thing is, how do I faster solve tickets and how do I crunch the mean time to resolve? Because that's where the whole so-called need or no need of generative frameworks comes into picture. So MTTRs can be crunched basis the criticality and severity of the last mile application or infrastructure that we're defining. So if there is a, I would say, a test application or a application which is hardly used once in a year kind of a thing in a client environment, and if it is going through some level of capacity issues or availability issues, we do have our own so-called small language models that are running on a very sovereign setup that allows us to go through those vector databases, use RAG to pull the required responses, and then those are presented and promoted in a manner where the this resolver groups get those on their interface, where they can then look at those resolution paths and then define what needs to be done to fix issues. But then the I would say there is also a customer base who requires faster resolution, much quicker response. For them, we have a combination of agent assist, which is predominantly on a third party ISV. And then we also have our CGI's agent model in terms of defining agent fabric to support various different triage activities. And those are invoked basis the criticality of the issue. The criticality of the issue is such that all my triage activities need to be initially deflected onto a agentic layer. It automatically does, and it gives me a summarized definition of what the issue is and what is a possible resolution in terms of fix. And it is all there on the ticket work log, which is a system of record. And then, we always believe in human in the loop, because we do not want these resolutions for critical applications. Believe me or not, if it's an agentic fabric, the resolution is always going to be human in the loop. And that's what our focus has been, because we don't want agents to go and fix issues without really being validated by engineers. And I guess That's the state we are in today. Eventually, when we see more predictable outcomes in terms of fixing issues, zero touch, we may move to a zero touch model. But as of now, I think the human in the loop is the primary way of managing agentic frameworks when it comes to managing customer managed services or operations.
Awesome, great. So, Dr. Rahul, so you talked about the agentic layer, and one thing that I have always been curious about, or at least in my thought experiments, one thing I've realized is that because AI agents, wake up with an amnesia every session, they don't wake up with all the information and all the context that is required to solve the problem at hand. This is even a problem for, let's say, a new joinee in a team, right? Like in most large organizations, there are a few people, there is a bunch of tribal knowledge somewhere, maybe it is documented somewhere, but again, where is it documented is still it could be up in the air, right? So and it so your best DevOps person might have a bunch of this knowledge which probably the AI agent does not have, and that making the information available to the agent and in a structured format, and making it easily queryable and things like that. So that is one critical piece of this whole thing. And honestly, the second part, so one is that making that context available to the agent the moment it wakes up, so the discoverability of all of the information. And second thing is that honestly it wouldn't care, like there is not as much ownership as a human, as you rightly mentioned, that we need a human in the loop when things break. So making things more making information, and it not might not just be information, it might be about tools and workflows that is used in the organization, making them discoverable and also guided and guardrailed for an AI agent to use, is something that is critical, is what I've felt. And that's what our principles have been while building these sort of features within facets also, where we provide a structured cataloged way for information to be present to the agents. And we have found that significantly makes it more efficient and more predictable as well. And of course, the human in loop checkpoints, where it would stop, review itself, ask the right questions, and then only proceed, right? So we internally have thought of this sort of a model. And I was specifically curious about this problem of tribal knowledge, and because I've worked with enterprises as well as small and mid-sized companies as well. And this is a problem everywhere. This is like universal, where there is one star developer or a star DevOps person who knows everything, or there are few that know a lot. And this must be a problem that is 100x worse in much at the scale that you operate in, right? So do you have some sort of a framework for this as well, as to how to tackle this information disparity between an agent who has just cold started and an ops engineer who has been there 10 years?
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic question. I think the artistic way of managing AI is a big challenge for all of us, whether it is a product company like yours or services company like us. I think the way to make sure that knowledge is first discoverable, and knowledge is mined, and knowledge is indexed in a manner where it becomes relevant for further consumption is a big task. It requires discipline, it requires platforms, it requires the right kind of approaches, it requires governance, it requires, I would say, skilled teams to manage it. And in CGI, specifically the kind of operations that I am responsible for, we've been doing it for a couple of years now, trying to create a so-called a very strong knowledge repository. And if you want your agents to be efficient, your downstream knowledge repository needs to be foundational and strong. And the focus should be, how do I make sure that I govern that knowledge in a manner where it is accurate, correct, and it is reusable. That is a combination of strong processes, oversight by senior technical specialists, and then continuous testing in terms of how the retrieval is at an agent level. I don't believe just focusing on downstream gives out the right kind of required retrieval, because retrievals again depend upon the creativity of the consumer in terms of what prompts the consumer is punching in. So we have actually standardized the upstream prompt framework, as I said, by prompt catalogs. So that way the retrieval also is defined to a level where there is standardization. Keep in mind, we are a service provider. Our success is to be innovative, to be creative, and be cost effective. And for us to do that, we have to figure out the best and the cheapest way of doing things, because I guess that's how the survival is going to be for any technology player, for that instance, whether it is a product player or a service player. That's how it has to be. So the discipline of doing this is not easy. And I have to admit that in large organizations, it requires more horsepower to get the governance and get the kind of discipline in place versus small product teams or small enterprises. But I'm very proud to say that we have a culture where we have teams who've been doing it for years. We have gamified the operations where we do incentivize people for contribution or contributing towards these initiatives. And we do have our so-called agentic specialists who are then responsible for tuning the agents to a level where we get the best response for our consumers. And our consumers are customers who are using our platforms. Our consumers are our own service engineers who are managing customer estate. Our consumers are sometimes end customers of our customers, where they are using it for some queries or issues that they are facing. So that way, I think we are catering to multi-dimensional personas to support customers using the power of agentic fabric. In terms of where does the, I would say, the broader challenge lie in terms of starting today and making it happen, and what should be the time frame that I need to look at to get this thing into production? When we started, it took us good amount of time to understand whether we are ready to go production grade or not. Well, it's not easy, but now I'm seeing a good culture shift, a pivot to a level where within months post a customer being onboarded, we are there ready because we have the confidence, we have the experience of doing it for multiple customers in the past. I have also seen a lot of cloud native clients who have their applications and infrastructure estates on cloud are looking at much faster throughput in terms of getting some of these frameworks up versus clients who got hybrid footprints across both on-prem, on-cloud kind of setup. So that way, I think it's very adventurous if you're trying to do something of this type on a high, I would say, heavy classic kind of a setup where customer is on-prem only, and then you're trying to set this up. It's not easy, but it's doable. But it takes time at times because you're trying to bring in a lot of different frameworks and a big culture shift in that kind of an environment. So there are experiences at all levels, and I do believe that we are faster than. I've been in the infrastructure delivery infrastructure domain for close to around 19 years, and I've seen big shifts in terms of what we are experiencing today versus what we were. My first experience in the infrastructure world was when things were on bare metal and virtualization was a transformation story. No longer virtualization is a transformation story. That's the de facto standard. And now we are looking at much complex transformations expectations when it comes to helping customers pivot to a more digital front office. So the answer is it is a bit of a it's a process, it's a discipline. It requires commitment from the owners and delivery teams to make it happen.
Got it.
A quick pause before we continue. I want to share something we're building at Facets Cloud that ties closely to today's conversation. So here's a picture: 5 days of complex DevOps work done in 60 minutes. This is what happens when AI meets orchestration. Meet Facets Intelligence, your AI platform engineer. Most DevOps teams still juggle Terraform modules, CI pipelines, and config scripts, each solving a part of the puzzle, none owning the system. Now, you can just paste your DevOps meeting transcripts into Facets, and our AI agent reads your client requirements, understands intent, and drafts the architecture automatically. It collaborates like a seasoned engineer, explaining choices, seeking approval, adapting instantly to feedback. Then it codes, generating, registering, and documenting every module automatically. Finally, it orchestrates the full environment: networks, clusters, configs, all deployed within minutes. The client's DevOps team spent 5 days on a similar setup. Facets AI delivered it in 60 minutes. Fixes, release, and validations included. Try Facets Intelligence today.
Yeah, so I am super happy that you mentioned the word culture in there, because I think that is one key thing there. And just to share an anecdote, so I think so we had an initiative. So we use Claude Code internally, and we have now a repository where you can share Claude skills with each other, right? So one of the skills that an engineer contributed was was that at the end of any session, it would just ask if it found something novel. It would prompt the user, do you want to push this as a skill into that repository? And I felt that is like true AI agentic culture that the engineer showed there. So I think it's definitely a cultural shift that needs to happen within organizations as well. And I want to piggyback on your point about people with hybrid setups where on-prem plus cloud. So probably most people who are listening to the podcast right now, a lot of them might be born into the cloud native world, and so probably they're not aware of some of the complexities there. So how much limited do you get when you have those sort of infrastructure also to manage? And also, do you think that now that is the pull of agentic operations a reason for them to try to migrate to cloud as well, like slowly getting into the cloud migration story here? So do you think that the desire to have agentic operations would encourage people to move to the cloud more?
See, it's a answer which is somewhere in between. See, agentic operations is for uh, if I'm a CIO of a enterprise that's focused on transformation, that requires faster, I would say much faster innovation, or faster innovation than, when I'm innovating, I need to move fast and fail fast. That's the foundational requirement as a CIO. I may focus on those principles. And to do that, I think being cloud native is the best way to do it. I think because you can spin off services, move fast in terms of testing new concepts, and you cannot get this kind of throughput, or this kind of velocity doing it on prem. Plus, the abstraction based management and the skills that are required to do cloud native support and cloud native application development is such that we can. It's difficult to find, but it's such that we can deliver faster innovations, test out new concepts much faster. In a classic world, I would have required an application engineer, an infrastructure engineer, then buy the software, deploy it in a test environment, demo environment, and then test out those innovation ideas and then present it. Now all that can be done using cloud native. In fact, you can build a MVC in a day using Lovable and other platforms, right? So the whole beauty of innovation defines the need for faster digital footprints. And I do believe that a lot of our customers are wanting to go that direction, but it also depends upon the domain of the customer. Let's say for a manufacturing customer where OT is the business and IT is an accelerator, for them there might be a different priority. But let's say I'm a retail customer. For my retail customers, being digital is foundational. So it all depends upon what industry you come from and where you want to go when it comes to innovation. And I do believe that at some point of time, the uh, the balanced to a level where workloads will be split between cloud and on-prem, to a level where the priority of the workload will define where it sits, not the choice of the CIO or the convenience of the environment. I think the convenience of the environment used to define, I want everything on prem because I'm not worried about my external threats and things like that. But now I think the convenience has to be expressed across a hybrid setup, and it has to be accepted by all CIOs and CS chief security officers, where we should be in a position to govern, protect, and also control some of these on-ramp architectures. And I do believe strongly that the world tomorrow will see this kind of hybrid setups.
Makes sense. Yeah, so it's totally an industry driven and business driven choice there. And it is well proven that cloud native probably gives you that velocity. And again, depends on the priorities. That makes sense. This is probably a non AI question in general. So what sort of triggers have you found for these cloud migration activities as this? So I've seen on prem to cloud, as well also laterally between clouds, happening a lot in the industry. So what in your experience has been the key triggers? Is it always financial, or what was your general assessment of that whole cloud migration business that is happening right now?
See, the initial migrations that we did were more economics oriented or more financial oriented. People believed that moving to cloud will be cheaper, easy to manage kind of thing. And we had the intervention of COVID where people moved to cloud because there was a need to have a state accessible for management across the globe. And then people were not able to go to offices and there was a remote management possible with the cloud. Now the whole shift is towards how do I get maximized business outcomes using the power of cloud? And that defines the choice of a environment for a CR. I don't think anyone wants to go to a cloud environment as a part of a strategy which is not connected back to the business, the need, and also the ability to manage it in the future. Also keep in mind that cost escalations are there in cloud setups. We have to accept it as consumers of cloud, and these cloud escalations are now pushing clients to look at what's the cheapest and the best option. So we have seen hybrid setups where we are moving workloads between hyperscalers, optimizing those costs to a level where those hybrid architectures are delivering the business outcome and also managing the back-end financial models or the economics of the setup. So that is given. And I think as we mature and as the industry matures, as the hyperscalers mature, and as the choice of compute also shifts from taking an OSI and then loading an app on top of it to more a function as a service as what you get in the likes of Lambdas and others. So if we are going at relay architectures or relay codes, I don't think the application of tomorrow is constrained to a particular hyperscaler. It will be hybrid. I don't think one service provider can solve the innovation of tomorrow, and that is what I do believe. As a service provider, we are working towards being in a position to support customers who can really innovate, and we as service providers be in a position to support them in their journeys of exploring newer things and innovating new things as they come across or as they explore these newer cloud environments. Also keep in mind the pure plays, the ISVs like the OpenAIs, the Anthropics of the world. While Gemini is part of Google, it's still a different framework outside the GCP core. So the point is, we have to also bring those pure plays into the on-ramp architecture so that they can also be integrated and we can explore service as an architecture. Hey, the biggest benefit is how do you make service as an app? I'm not saying PaaS or a platform will be the only way to build applications, but I'm saying you have to come up with your service architecture first to decide on what kind of consumer frameworks that I will have to architect when it comes to. I'm a hardcore technologist and an architect in my past life, so I can relate to what is happening today versus what we were very defined in those TOGAF models in terms of enterprise architectures, boxing architectures in a manner where those three-tier frameworks were fitting into the core. But now I think things have changed quite a lot where the boundaryless data centers are driving the future of enterprises when it comes to their IT. And I do believe that there is a big potential in terms of being loosely connected and yet bound to a service outcome. And that is where I think the big difference is going to be. And when you're loosely connected, I think you have a choice to pivot and flip basis the need that you have when it comes to consuming a particular service or a particular hyperscaler or an on-prem service or an on-prem compute.
Yeah. Makes sense. So I think so in the future the vendor lock-in is not going to be that much of a thing in terms of cloud and even hybrid operations. Probably we will end up in a world where generative AI makes even on-prem a little bit more accessible to people with lesser skill set or things like that at some point maybe. Yeah. So right. Yeah. And so we ourselves have pursued a bunch of cloud transformation, I mean digital transformation or cloud migration sort of journeys. And in our case, like I think agentic operations, or we could leverage generative AI in a fashion where the agent could catalog everything. That's the interesting part, where it could even classify resources into different product lines. Like, it just looking at a cloud, it just gets a cloud read access, and it is able to figure out what the different business units are, classify all of the resources, do discovery of the applications, the infrastructure and everything, and then model it into the cloud. Even get access to the once given access to the code repositories, it could even make the code changes that are absolutely necessary for it to be moved on to the cloud, right? So we could find a lot of velocity gain in that sense, where projects that would have been a few months worth of effort to act, and that to business critical activities like switching to a different cloud, could now be finished in weeks instead of months. So this is something that we are seeing real time. And I was just curious, in the enterprise scale, are you also experimenting on similar stuff?
I think the concept of pods and tribes are driving this. So we do have customers who are creating these high velocity pods, is what you just expressed, and that's becoming more or less the agile way of delivering faster application code, and then faster infrastructure deployments. A lot of this is abstraction based, using the power of infrastructure as a code. A lot of this is full stack SRE kind of support model, site reliability engineering kind of a support model. We've seen a lot of new age applications being built using this kind of approach. We are also now seeing customers who were in more SDLC classic setups wanting to get into this agile models of delivery, where more product centric approach drives the outcome of a particular application from a business point of view. So there are a lot of changes happening, and uh, irrespective of what scale the enterprise that we are supporting is, we've seen these changes or these shifts happening in pockets. Some customers have got 10 to 20% of their teams in this kind of a setup. Few of them have got 50. Large ones don't really operate 100% in this kind of setup, because there's always a legacy that may not help us to get into this kind of an operating model. But as we build new code, I think this kind of an approach becomes more and more lean, more easy. Keep in mind, this also requires specialized teams, specialized talent. And when a service provider, or when it is in-house small team, these pods can be well defined using a certain capacity resource framework. But then when you are trying to broad base this across, let's say, hundreds of pods, then it becomes a classic horizontal managed service approach, which then looks at viability of these verticalized models, and tries to optimize within these verticalized models wherever possible, to bring out cost optimization. And that is the way to do it, because keep in mind that I can run maybe 20 cycles in a horizontal setup, sorry, vertical setup, my bad. But then, when you're trying to scale, you have to also look into costs and things like that. So larger enterprise do look at cost of operations who are trying to set up these things. But let's say if I'm doing innovation, if I'm trying to build a new application, I think I strongly believe building a verticalized model will be a much more impactful, faster way of doing things versus a classic way of doing it.
Makes sense. Got it. And so when we talk about the enterprise scale and this agentic development, or building products and deploying them, even one thing that always comes into mind is the talk of, should we use the publicly available products, like your Anthropic products or OpenAI ones. So there, I have seen, I personally have seen where people would prefer to control the data, and probably they would want to have a self-hosted model, or let's say a Bedrock hosted model. And then there might, I think, I've not yet encountered, but I'm sure in enterprise scale there would be some cases like you had mentioned, where you develop your own models and actually run them on the bare metals. So where do you draw the line, and what in your experiences is the trigger for people to own the models as well, rather than just the data and where the transaction happens?
See, that's the choice of the enterprise. I don't believe any model is, when you're on ISVs, you are current, and you are subscribing to the latest and the greatest coming in from the ISVs, and they are They are innovating. They are transforming almost every minute, every second. So that's the beauty of that. In that kind of a setup, you have to put the right kind of guardrails. You have to have the right kind of data frameworks. You have to also have the back-to-back arrangement with the ISVs to make sure that they bracket or control your data within your consumers within your enterprise's environment, and then that becomes your ISV approach. There are customers who, by compliance requirement, cannot subscribe to this kind of a third party ISP relay framework. For them, they're setting up GPUs, they're broad basing their data centers, building the GPU fabs, slicing GPUs, or creating those GPU monitoring frameworks, and integrating them with the hyperconverged stack so that the extendable architectures are supporting the classic investments on hyperconverged and bare metal connected back to the GPUs. A lot of our customers are experimenting with that too, and these customers are the ones who don't want to expose their data to external entities and want to keep it sovereign on-prem. So we do have a CGI our own way of setting up GPUs as best practice. You work with the likes of we are technology agnostic, so we work with Nvidia, we work with AMD, we've done this with Intel in the past, and then when it comes to the language models, there are a lot in the market. There's a lot in the open source today. So we work with the likes of Meta, Llama 4.0. Now it's 4.2. We have tested out Hugging Face. So we've tested out Mistral. So there is a lot that we have done when it comes to experimentation, and we do believe that there is merit in both. I don't believe in a particular preference when it comes to. I would love to keep things in a particular manner where it gives the right kind of business benefit. Let's say, if I'm a CIO and if I'm constrained on-prem, but I have to then educate my business that this is a compute heavy, investment heavy kind of a setup. So do we have the potential to keep on pumping in money to keep the environment going, because data gets produced every millisecond, and it has to be in a language model used in a and used back to train to a level where it is rightly retrieved when it comes to the usage of that particular language model. So that education is important. If the enterprises financials can offer it, then why not? The other option is to go for APIs, which is, I guess, most of our customers today subscribing. CGI has both the models. We work with APIs. We've got our own sovereign setups. So we are, again, as a company, agnostic in terms of preferred choice of language models. And with APIs, the biggest concern that some of our customers are having is how much of this is auditable, how much of data control is auditable today. Can you give me an audit certificate of the relays that are happening on an ISV API? And what's the authenticity of the ISV's usability for non-enterprise or outside the enterprise kind of setup? So those are things that no one knows, no one has an answer to. And I think those are the things that go in our disclosures, in our contracts as known risks, and we do manage it in a manner where it's balanced between the potential of innovation and the possible exposures that we carry.
Got it. And out of curiosity, so is this sovereign, is setting up your own sovereign AI infrastructure, is it getting any easier? Is there a baseline? Is there a better baseline? Is it converging across vendors? Is it getting any better or cheaper?
The honest answer is, for the first time when you do it, it's very difficult because you're learning it. And it was not easy for us when we did it for the first time. And we were working with the OEMs to set it up. Just to let you know, it's not like we were doing it, experimenting, exploring it ourselves. With the OEMs, it was difficult to integrate back into our HCI and also our bare metal stack and also our virtualized environment, for instance. So is it getting cheaper, faster? I think the complexity is just going up. If you see the pace of innovation of the GPUs or the OEMs, they're dropping every 3 months something new. And there is also a big elephant which is waiting for which waiting to be explored, the quantum chips. Right? So we don't know when it's going to be cheaper because quantum is uh, still costly, highly expensive. If I want to do sovereign, I know quantum APIs are there. you can play around, but I haven't seen as a part of my client base people experimenting with quantum at production grade. But I think the secret here is the interoperability between the various different OEMs and also the standards that are required to set up a sovereign framework with an hybrid OEM kind of a setup. Those architectures, those standards have to be defined by the industry. Those standards are not there. So let's see, if I'm buying an OEM chip, I think the OEM's approach is such that there is a so-called native buy-in or lock-in. So today I don't want that locking. Why should I have that locking? Because I want to experiment with multiple OEMs to a level where I can create a interoperable framework and yet be in a position to conserve my investments. So when I am trying to move away from a 3-year-old OEM investment that I've made, I have to every 3 years put in new to to replace or add in, but the replaced one or the extension that we are adding it was much powerful than the retained one, and the retained one becomes more or less obsolete when you're adding in more and more compute. So there's a lot as a industry that we have to do to get that so-called hybrid architecture in place when it comes to software. And that is where I guess there will be, I think it's a win-win for all OEMs. I don't think there is going to be a challenge, because in the way things are growing, there is a big merit, because the OEM's biggest business today is with the hyperscalers. I don't think the enterprises are making billions of investments on data centers. But if the OEMs want the enterprises to also have sovereign setups, this interoperable or the extendable architectures will have to be defined and will have to be exercised, implemented by the partners like us, and the industry will have to define it. There isn't anything that I'm aware of. And if you know something, please do educate us. I'll call you to our office to take a session. But I haven't seen anything, of this type in the industry today.
Yeah, neither do we, because we have no experience doing that yet. But yeah, it is just a question out of curiosity. I think it's been an interesting discussions, and maybe what I'll do is I'll end it with an open-ended question over here. So, one prediction for infrastructure and or AI ops in the next 2 years. What is your big prediction here?
See, my view is AI ops consumption today is not at a capacity or level where I would say it's today limited to only 10 to 20% of the front office automation. I do believe that there is a stronger case to move towards a 50% plus kind of operations on AI first or AI ops. The reskilling part will be faster than the past. I mean, the way today's IT is looking at AI is way different than what the IT was perceiving automation. So I do believe that people are hungry to learn new, because this is a very disruptive framework. And I think we'll find more and more talent using AI, and that will make AI ops much faster, much real in terms of being there to drive that AI as a first defense to manage operations.
Awesome. And we would like to contribute to that whole effort, right? So Dr. Rahul, that was fun talking. I think we covered a broad spectrum of topics here. Probably there is worth doing one more episode at some point to cover all of the bunch of stuff that we had discussed ahead of the podcast itself. Yeah, so it's been great, and thanks, folks, for listening in. We'll link Dr. Rahul's profile as well as his blog post that I mentioned earlier in the description. Do check it out. Thanks, Dr. Rahul.
Thank you, and good luck, Rohit.
All right, folks, that's a wrap for today's episode of AI in DevOps. I hope you found it fun and thought-provoking. It's okay if left you with more questions than answers. That's kind of the point. We are trying to figure out the role of AI in DevOps. If you have somebody in mind who you think we should invite onto the podcast and you would like to listen to them, send us their coordinates. We'll invite them. Wherever you're listening, whether it be Spotify or Apple, whatever platform, just click on the subscribe button so that you get notified whenever we have a new guest.